What if Peeta died in the first Hunger Games? One of the most iconic moments in the Hunger Games series that had us all on the edge of our seats was when Peeta asked Katniss to kill him at the end of the first Hunger Games. But Katniss opted for suicide instead. A very touching moment that caused a domino effect, resulting in lots of the key moments from the rest of the Hunger Games series. But here's a question for you. What if that went differently? What if Katniss had killed Peeta then and there? What happens to the story? What happens to Katniss and Haymitch and Effie and the revolution? Who survives and who doesn't? You are going to be shocked by how this one moment changes the entire story. So let's jump in, and may the odds be ever in your favor. The Hunger Games is such a good franchise. It tells you everything in one go. Poverty sucks. Capitalism is evil. Teenagers can change the world. Love triangles are fascinating. Oh, and reality TV shows are not to be trusted. I'm looking at you, Love Island. But on the subject of Peeta's death, what's funny is that technically Peeta did die in the 75th Hunger Game. Remember when he got electrocuted? His heart stopped beating, and it would have remained so if it wasn't for Finnick. But we're focusing on the 74th Hunger Games here. Specifically when Peeta and Katniss were the last ones standing, and Peeta asks Katniss to kill him. So let's say Katniss obliges Peeta's request. Let's say she shoots the guy with the bread right in the chest and she wins the 74th Hunger Games. Katniss's life changes immediately. She's no longer a tribute, she's a victor, and she gets all the perks that come with that. She and her family relocate to Victor Village, and she gets to live with Haymitch and starts living a seemingly better life. Now Haymitch, on the other hand, probably becomes a happier person, because this time he managed to bring somebody back, as opposed to what happened every year before. He gets happier, he gets healthier, and he probably stops drinking, although I'm not really sure how long that would last. So because of her success, Katniss would become a mentor. She mentors the next set of tributes from District 12, and the status quo is upheld, at least for now. There's a very good chance that the tributes that Katniss mentors don't make it out of the games alive, meaning that Katniss will feel like there's even more blood on her hands. So maybe she turns to drink in the same way that Haymitch does. Regardless of how that plays out, Katniss, as the Mockingjay, becomes a mascot of the Capitol, and the Hunger Games will continue for a time. I say for a time because what comes next is mind-blowing, but more on that in a moment. Now this one's fairly obvious. With Peeta out of the way, Katniss gets together with Gale, but their relationship is probably an unhappy one. Yes, she and Gale had a history before the Hunger Games, but given that everything that happened during the games, with Katniss and Peeta sharing that kiss in the cave, if she returned to District 12 even after killing Peeta, there would have been a lot of tension in their relationship. Sure, Gale would have understood she was just doing what she had to do to survive, but there'd always be the question, was she with him because she loved him or for something else? People argue that Katniss's love for Peeta was born out of debt, but the same thing is true of Gale. If you read through the book, you can see that Katniss is in the same sort of position with Gale, where she feels a subtle obligation to love him, given everything he's done for her and her family over the years. Sure, she and Gale have some great moments, and sure, there was the line in the books where Katniss says, "Gale is mine, and I am his." But still, it's hard to tell whether she truly loved Gale. So if they got together, there's no guarantee they'd be happy. Not to mention Katniss's lingering guilt. She would have known how Peeta felt, and she would have had the lingering guilt having killed him. And that would inevitably cause a strain between her and Gale. So I'm not sure their relationship would have lasted. Sometimes it's hard to believe that the Hunger Games series was meant for a younger audience. There was so much death in the series. If Peeta had died in the first Hunger Games, then a lot of that death would never have occurred. People like Cinna, Mags, the tributes from other districts in the 75th annual Hunger Games, and Seneca Crane all live. The suicidal human wave from District 5 would never have occurred. And the death of all of the civilians from the other districts during the rebellion, well, they wouldn't have happened either. Snow would never have bombed District 12, and those houses and those people wouldn't have been destroyed. And what's more, Prim would have survived too, and so would everybody else who was bombed by Coin around Snow's house. All of those deaths would have been avoided because the rebellion wouldn't happen in the manner that we see. Katniss doesn't end up as the Mockingjay. She doesn't end up being the mascot that gets everybody riled up. No, the rebellion would fall on the people of District 13. So the rebellion could still happen. Because yes, there's still a chance Katniss could decide to live a quiet life in District 12 in her somewhat unhappy relationship with Gale. But there's still a possibility of the rebellion because Katniss killed somebody she loved in front of everyone due to the compulsion of the Capitol. Everybody saw that happen. And we saw how District 11 responded with the circumstances around Rue's death, and it's clear that the citizens of Panem were frustrated. They had to endure for years watching their people die at the hands of the Capitol, watching their kids killed in a ridiculous competition, and having to live hand to mouth while those in the Capitol lived in such extraordinary surplus. It didn't take much before for people to join the rebellion. So, with or without Peeta's death, the rebellion probably still happens. But what about Katniss? Does she join the rebellion and ally with the people of District 13? I mean, it could happen. Remember, District 13 has people everywhere. They were able to get to a bunch of the victors of the 75th Hunger Games. So yeah, it wouldn't have been hard for them to get to Katniss and get her to join the cause. But in this scenario, without Peeta still being alive, would Katniss's voice have been as compelling? Would it still have helped stir people up in the same way as it does when she's the Mockingjay and the face of the rebellion? I'm not so sure. Everything that Peeta did helped Katniss to get to that position and that role. So without him to do that, who knows? And that brings us to the final possibility. So yeah, that title was kind of a spoiler, but President Snow would win if Peeta was dead. The rebellion would never succeed. You see, there's one key moment in Mockingjay. Peeta gives an interview with Caesar Flickerman. He sees a clip of Katniss, and that triggers him to warn them that the Capitol is planning to bomb District 13. If it wasn't for Peeta's warning, it's likely District 13 wouldn't have evacuated in time, and the Capitol would have succeeded in wiping them all out, killing Katniss's mum and sister in the process, and dealing a huge blow to the rebellion. So even if Katniss had survived, she wouldn't have had the resources or the mental fortitude to continue fighting. And the people of Districts 2 and 1 would never have joined the rebellion, meaning Snow would have won after killing lots and lots of people. So you remember earlier when I listed all the deaths from the series that wouldn't have happened? Yeah, that's kind of cancelled out by President Snow here. It's ironic that with or without Peeta's death, there are still going to be a ton of tragedies. And speaking of deaths that would massively impact a story, imagine if Ron Weasley died in that chess match in the Philosopher's Stone. That would change everything. I broke that entire scenario down in this video, and you'll want to watch that next because it changes everything.